Have you ever thought to yourself, there has to be more than this? Why does it seem like life has a way of making us feel less? Not just feel like less, but feel less, as in numb, leaving us to wonder if this is it. Is this all that life has for us? We spend every day just trying to make it from one item on our calendar to the next, from one email to the next, from one soul-crushing moment to the next. Was this God's plan? Is there more to life than this? What if God really does have more for us? More love, more joy, more peace, more purpose, more hope. What if God is the God of more? And what if the life we've been searching for is really found as we surrender our lives more and more to Jesus? Because Jesus is offering us a way to live life that is more than we've ever even dreamed of. We are Altitude Church. We are here to help you become more like Jesus. So, what are you becoming?
Hi, I'm Ron Olson, one of the pastors here at Altitude Church, and I want to welcome you to our online service today. And I'm really excited about what's happening here at Altitude Church because we're launching in this fall at a new location, a new site. If you want to know more information about the launch, just email us at launchteams@altitude.church, and we'll send you more information on the exciting things that are happening. If you have any questions or comments or prayer concerns, we invite you to email us at the address on the screen below so we can connect with you. To answer any questions, to pray for your needs. If you're a first-time guest at Altitude Church, we will actually donate $5 to Battle Against Sex Trafficking in the Denver area for contacting us. Today, we are putting together 100 Easter baskets for some of the kids in our community as we are partnering with Beyond Home. So if you want to help out in this project, you can do that by giving to the church, and the baskets are about $5 to $7 each. Next week is Easter, and so we have two services next week, 9 and at 10:45, both in person and online. And we invite you to come and join us, and if you want, bring a friend. Now, also, if you're interested in joining a life group, whether it be online or in person, send us an email to one of our pastors and we'll contact you for more information. Thank you again for joining us online for our worship. And before we begin, I'd like to welcome our new director of This Gen Ministry, who's over our children and youth ministries.
Hey Altitude families, I am Chandra Tanji and I am the new This Generation Director here at Altitude Church. I'm so excited to be here. I come from a long passion in my life of working with children and youth. When I was in high school, I was the one who was always babysitting while my friends were out doing whatever. And it's just, I've taken some full circles in life. I took a long stint in the fitness industry, and it's brought me just back full circle the last 5 or 6 years working on staff at a different church in a similar setting, and I feel like super equipped and excited to be here. I'm looking for leaders and volunteers to help out. We are going to continue with the Orange curriculum, which is an amazing curriculum. Lots of fun and crafts and learning and lessons. We also need people to come alongside and to work with these kids as they grow. And our goal is to start as early as possible and to get them to just have a place where they can come and look forward to and have fun and learn some Bible stories and then start to grow into the youth ministry. And I've been really looking into that as well, and I'm gonna have some exciting announcements coming up for the youth ministry and getting our student men and youth group going up and running here, hopefully in the next couple weeks as well. And we're just gonna have a social event for them. So keep your eyes out for that on our social media as well. And so I'm so excited again to work with the kids and the youth as well as the families, and to just have parents come alongside us as well. And I just can't wait to see what the future of this ministry is going to be here at Altitude Church.
The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. My God will never fail. Oh, my God will never fail. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. There's power in the mighty name of Jesus. Every war he rages, he will win. That's right. And I'm not backing down from any giants. 'Cause I know how the story ends. That's right. Yes, I know how the story ends. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. Thank you, Jesus. Yeah. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. Oh, you take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. Come on, sing it out, sing it out. Come on. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take
Hey, Altitude Church. My name's Jason. If we've never met, I get this awesome privilege of being able to work with the leadership of your church and Pastor Lee. I lead a thing called coaching.church, and I just am honored to be a part of the process of what God is doing in launching Altitude this fall, to change your city, to be an epicenter of hope, to see 1% of the Denver metro area transformed by the power of God. It's exciting what God is up to. He's doing amazing things through the selling of buildings, the purchasing of buildings, onboarding new team members. A lot of exciting stuff in this season, but man, there's an exciting season that's coming as well. I think about when Jesus was calling the disciples to follow him. One of the things that we often overlook is they had been a part of one thing their whole life that Jesus was now in a way disrupting because he was creating a new thing. And he was calling those disciples that had only known the old covenant to be a part of establishing the new covenant for all of us to benefit. You guys have a rich history, and God's done amazing things, and you've established and gotten in a rhythm of being a part of a church family. But now God's in a way disrupting that, and he's calling you to be a part of a launch team, to start something new that will benefit so many more people to come. And so I'm excited as this season progresses and you step into the next phase of this launch process, where you begin to see yourself a little different. You're not just a part of a church family, you're a part of a launch team that is launching something brand new that will change your city forever. And I pray that your eyes will change a little bit when you start to see the people around you like the disciples. Some of them instantly thought of a family member that needed to follow Jesus. Some of them begin to think of neighbors and friends and begin to invite them into what God was doing. And I pray the same for you, that you begin to look around. Maybe there's family members that need to be a part of launching Altitude. Maybe there's friends that need to be a part of launching Altitude. Or maybe there's just some neighbors that need to be a part of what Altitude can do in their life. I want you to get excited because God has way more in store than just selling and purchasing buildings. It's transforming a city, and you are a part of it. I look forward to continue working with your leadership and seeing this summer really become a season of launch team gatherings and building that launch team from you guys and the community, and seeing Altitude launch strong this fall. Thanks again for letting me be a part of it, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
For just a moment, I want you to imagine the most peaceful place on the planet. This is somewhere that you can disconnect, turn off your phone, and just sit and relax. You can take a long, deep breath. Where are you? Is it a beach? Somewhere on top of the mountains? Is it sitting in your house or in your backyard in a hammock? For me, the most peaceful place on earth might just be Jamaica. You see, years ago, when my wife and I got married, we were able to honeymoon in Jamaica. Now, we haven't been able to take very many exotic trips throughout our marriage, but as we were getting ready for the wedding day, I was saving up because I wanted to treat my new bride to something that was an experience, something to mark this momentous occasion in our life. And so I was able to save up enough to go to Sandals in Jamaica. And Sandals is this all expense paid, exotic luxury resort where you can just go throughout and do anything. There was just one little snag. While I was making pretty decent money for a 20-something, I was still only able to save up enough for the basic package. Now, I didn't know what that meant until we arrived. So my wife and I, after we get off the plane and get chartered over to the Sandals Resort, we come up to the desk and we're like, hey, we're here, we're celebrating our honeymoon, we're so excited. And they showed us up to our room, which surprisingly was up the stairs from the lobby and just right there. Like it was almost in the lobby. What I found out was the basic package basically afforded you a room with a bed, a few feet on either side, and a bathroom. My wife and I couldn't believe it. We're like, this really can't be the thing that we paid for on our trip, right? And as we sat on the beds, we could actually hear conversations going on in the hallway and in the lobby. And I don't mean like type conversations. I mean like I could hear the conversation as if I was in the conversation. So my wife and I kind of looked at each other. We're like, this is not going to work. But what do we do? I mean, we paid for what we paid for. It's not like we had more money. And so I did the only thing I thought reasonable. I went down to the concierge and I just looked at her and gave her the biggest, saddest puppy dog eyes I could. And remember, this is like 12 years ago, so I was much better looking then. And I was just like, ma'am, we're on our honeymoon. I had no idea that we would be right off the lobby. And I just start going into this whole spiel, and she kind of just goes, it's okay. It's all right, man. Everything is Irie. And I'm like, first off, I don't know what that means. But second off, like, my whole honeymoon is in your hands. What can we do? And she just looked at me and said, we got this. We'll take care of you. So I didn't know what that means either. Like, maybe they're going to move us from one shoebox to a little bit farther away shoebox, but anything would be better than the shoebox we started in. But come to find out, when they said they were going to take care of us, they meant it. They took us down this pathway in a little golf cart looking thing to like this private villa where there was 3 or 4 units in one spot, but you had this secluded area almost all to yourself, and every 2 rooms had their own swimming pool. Like, they really took care of us. Now suddenly our room was a suite, and when we opened our windows, we could see like lush tropical greenery. So on that day, I went from the excitement of having just been married to the horror of realizing that I haven't impressed my young bride by even this amazing accommodation I thought we had, to all of a sudden having that honeymoon of our dreams. It was amazing. Everything truly was aire after that. So if I was guessing my place of peace, it would probably be right there. Or maybe it would be someplace we haven't been. Someplace like Hawaii. Now, you've probably seen in the movies or that one season of Saved by the Bell, you know the one, where they're all in Hawaii, and it's just this most picturesque, amazing beauty, this awesome scenery everywhere, the most beautiful place on the planet, right? And like Jamaica, there's a word that the locals use that means more than just what you see, but what you feel as you're there. In Jamaica, it's aire, which means everything's great, everything's good, there's a lack of worry. In Hawaii, it's aloha. Now, a couple weeks ago, I was talking with one of our elders, and he was actually sharing the idea behind the word aloha. It doesn't just mean hello and goodbye like I thought it did, right? That's a great multi-purpose word. But what it actually means is something so much deeper. It means the embodiment of love, peace, compassion, and a mutual understanding and respect. The best translation of aloha from Hawaiian to English is actually the presence of the divine breath. It's feeling what God put into us when we were new and fresh. It's amazing. It's no wonder when we imagine these most peaceful places on earth, we gravitate towards places like this. Each of us longs for something more than just beautiful scenery, as amazing as that is. What we're really looking for is that feeling, that aire, that aloha that goes down deep, somewhere into our very cells and our very souls. We're looking for a way that doesn't constantly trouble or break our hearts. The ancient Hebrews had a word for this as well. It was shalom. Now, in most of the translations you see, this word simply gets translated as peace. But just like those other two words, aire and aloha, it means something so much more. Shalom means much more than just the absence of war. It means this above and beyond wholeness, completeness, health, security, and even prosperity, but in the right sense, the best sense of that word. Shalom is something that goes down deep within us. Not just something we know with our heads, but something we can't even hold in our hearts. And so with that understanding, let's turn in our Bibles back to John chapter 14. We're going to pick up right where we left off last week. If you don't have a Bible that you allow to go through you on a regular basis, I would encourage you to download the Bible app. And why not check out one of the reading plans? For example, check out the one by the Bible Project. The Bible Project's reading plan is fantastic. It's a little longer than some of the others, but there's these great videos that walk you through and help you understand more of God's Word. John chapter 14, starting in verse 27, Jesus says this, "Peace I leave with you." Again, shalom I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled or fearful. You have heard me tell you, I'm going away, and I am coming to you. If you loved me, you would rejoice that I'm going to the Father, because the Father is greater than I. I have told you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you may believe. I will not talk with you much longer, because the ruler of the world is coming. He has no power over me. On the contrary, so that the world may know that I love the Father, I do as the Father commanded me. And then he ends with this, very interesting. Get up, let's leave this place. Right? Get up and let's go. Now it's important to remember the context of what's going on right here. Jesus is telling his closest followers, these 11 disciples who have been walking with him and doing life with him for the better part of, give or take, about 3 years, that he's going away. Now, we're not hiding anything here. Jesus is pretty clear. He's telling them, no, I'm going to die. It's no wonder that John 14 is bookended at the beginning and at the end of the chapter by that phrase, do not let your heart be troubled. This is emotionally troubling. I've been around enough funerals, or even those in my family just recently, to know, and know in a deeper sense of knowing that even when you understand someone is going to pass, and even if you know in your head and maybe even your heart that that's better for them, it's still hard. It's still a difficult thing. And these disciples are going through that process. They're experiencing all 5 stages of grief. You know, they're angry, they're bargaining, but they haven't yet gotten to acceptance. This is what Jesus is leading them towards. Jesus, though, has the audacity to tell them that it's actually going to be better for them that he leaves. And again, we have those moments where, someone says, oh, it's better that that person passes on. They're in pain or whatever's going on with that. And you get it, but you're the one who's going to be left on the other side with that void, with that missing piece of your life. But Jesus is saying, no, it's better that I go away. In fact, there's peace that's coming. There's a wholeness, a goodness, a feeling that will saturate down from within your very cells, through your bones, and into your heart. It's better. We've all experienced grief and loss in this season. very rare that we say this is better. I think it's important to recognize that that promise Jesus left the disciples, those 11 remaining, wasn't just for them. It was for us as well. Jesus promised that he is leaving us peace, and that as we know the way of life that Jesus empowers us to live, that we can experience a wholeness that the world around us doesn't have to offer. And so that's why we come to our key thought for the day. The way of Jesus leads to unsurpassed peace. The way of Jesus leads to unsurpassed peace, a peace that can't be described in any other ways. See, verse 27 is one of those verses that maybe we turn to in moments of difficulty. Take a look at it again. It says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you." And this is a great reminder, but I also want to remind us of what we've kind of talked about throughout this series, that there's a difference between knowing something and knowing something. There's those 4 levels of knowing that the Bible uses. The first being knowing a fact, the second being knowing the truth behind a fact, the third being knowing something intimately, as in a relationship, and the fourth, knowing proved by committing your way of life to something. And let's be very clear, there's a huge difference between knowing peace on a level 1 and a level 4, right? Knowing peace on the basic facts of peace is like we've studied world peace in a history book, or we've looked it up in a dictionary, or we've thrown up the V, right, and said, peace, this is what we're about. But it's very different when you feel at peace. You're with me on that, right? There's a huge difference. And there's a huge difference in what Jesus is offering us and what he compares and contrasts it to the peace that this world offers us. He is offering us shalom. He's offering us something deep, something substantive, something that overcomes our trials. See, we've tried living the way of the world. We've all tried chasing after, whether it's money or sex or fame or just job security or whatever. And it's not led us to peace. Maybe a dictionary definition, but not that feeling that overcomes. In fact, the world system, the way that the world around us encourages us to live life, it pushes us to encounter a life that is often defined by the absence of peace. Right? The way of the world is often more defined by worry. I asked you at the beginning, what would it look like to be totally at peace? Where would you be? And maybe you came up with 1 or 2 answers, but if I were to ask you, what's on your heart right now? What is it that you're worrying about? That list would probably go on and on and on, right? We're worried about our bills. We're worried about our kids. We're worried about the government. We're worried about our neighborhood. We're worried about, this, the debt that's stacking up, this over. It's everywhere, right? It's all of the things. We're worried by almost everything. This world does not give us peace. But Jesus promised us he would leave us his peace. Part of the problem is the world bases its understanding of peace on having things or accomplishing things, while God's peace is relational. In the way of the world, peace, hope, and love are things that you earn or that you work for. But in God's economy, these are wonderful gifts, actually, from an unreasonably generous God who loves us and wants what is truly best for us. The way of Jesus leads to unsurpassed peace. In this text, you'll notice that Jesus contrasts his way that brings peace with the way of the world. That's a theme, a thematic element that we can pull out from this. Jesus doesn't tell us that our peace will come as our problems go away. In fact, you'll know if you were here a couple weeks ago with us that in John 16:33, he even says that in this world you will have trouble. In other words, if we're waiting for all of our problems to go away before we finally have peace, let's just say we're going to be waiting for quite some time. and still waiting. And still waiting. It's just not going to be there, right? Think about the context of what's going on even in this very moment. I mentioned a couple of moments ago that these 11 disciples were hanging out with Jesus. How many disciples did Jesus have? 12, right? I didn't mean that to be like a Blue's Clues moment or anything. I wasn't waiting for you to say it out loud. It's just, he had 12. So who's missing? Judas, right? And where is Judas in this very moment? In that exact moment, Judas is betraying him to his death. But yet, Jesus doesn't point to the circumstances and say, once these things change, then peace will come. He says, I leave you peace. Not like this world leaves you peace. My peace is different. Some years ago, I was wrestling with a lack of peace. It was actually a season, or the season, I should say, that ultimately led me to come and live here in Denver. At that point in my life, I had a plan. I was serving at a fantastic church under a great pastor, and that pastor and I had talked about what the next few years of our ministry would look like. In our plans, this amazing pastor shared that he had a finite amount of years left of what he called where he could do really impactful ministry as a lead pastor. A finite amount of time. And so what he started to share, which also became my plan in this season, was that for about 3 years, I would prepare to launch our next campus. We were a multi-site church. And then I'd spend about another 3 years establishing that campus. But then at the end of that 6-year period, we would begin a process, a long-term process, where I would begin to take on more of his roles, and he would begin to set aside more of his roles, so that by the time this long-term process was complete, I would be the lead pastor. I would be his successor. But only about 1 year, year and a half or so into the plans, all of a sudden, things changed. This pastor felt through prayer with God that he was not the one who was supposed to build up this exact ministry. And he felt like God was leading him to another church. And so all of a sudden, plans changed. My plans changed. And this long-term plan was out the window. I started praying over whether or not God still had me at that church. And it felt like that maybe something was different, that maybe there was something that was changing. It's that old adage, like, if you ever want to make God laugh, you just tell him your plans. And I don't think God is that, I don't want to say vindictive, but you know what I mean. Like, that doesn't match up with the character of God. He truly wants what's best for us. And yet, it was one of those moments where I had put my faith in plans and not in God. So when the plans changed, my peace changed. Ironically, I was asked in that season to go preach at another church, fill in for a buddy of mine. And the topic he wanted me to speak on was peace. And here I am trying to reimagine our children's future, try to reimagine what we're going to be doing with perhaps the rest of our lives. I had started making all these plans that were setting us on a certain path, and now that path forward was fuzzy. Changed. The road shifted in front of me, and I'm being asked to come and speak as a guest pastor to a group of people I barely know about having peace when I'm not sure I'm experiencing it myself. As I prayed, I felt like God was giving me a word for that congregation, and I feel like it's very relevant for us right now. The word that I shared with them that day is that peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of Jesus. Peace is not the absence of conflict. That's what we all think of. When our problems go away, then we'll have peace. But that's not it. Peace is the presence of Jesus. And I think maybe you need to hear that message today. Peace doesn't magically show up when all your problems go away. It's not when you're sitting on the beach sipping Mai Tais and have no cares in the world. That's a form of peace, but the moment you get back, those emails have already piled up. The voicemails are already there. The things on your desk at work haven't gone away. The problems that you went to that tropical location to sit on the beach and avoid are waiting for you when you get back. That's not peace. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of Jesus. And the way of Jesus leads to unsurpassed peace. So what about you? Take a moment in the comments section and describe a season of your life where you felt most at peace. And maybe just share why you felt so at peace. What was it about that season that made it so peaceful? Take a moment, share your thoughts in the comments section, and then why not lovingly and in an uplifting way, interact with somebody else, interact with their comments so that this moves from just a monologue you're hearing to a dialogue or a Jesus conversation that you're engaging in that really can change something deep within you. Because the reality is, Jesus is offering a peace that transcends understanding. Jesus is offering you wholeness for what's broken. Jesus is offering you the breath of life that breathes and finally gives your soul, your body, your mind, your emotions strength. It restores you even when you're ready to break. This Palm Sunday, Jesus is offering you something that you can't find on any beach or pay for at any luxury resort in the entire world, because the feeling of peace is temporary. Call this a journey because it's more than a feeling, right? But the peace, that shalom that abides deep within us, it's something that's a gift. It's a present, and it comes through the presence. This is the way the Apostle Paul describes peace in Philippians chapter 4. Philippians chapter 4, starting in verse 4, says this. It says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice." And there's an exclamation mark there. You know he's serious. "Let your graciousness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. Don't worry about anything, but in everything through prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding," don't miss that, "will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." This is the way of peace. This is the way of unsurpassed peace. This is the way. But notice, this peace overcomes circumstances. It's not bound by them. It's not at their mercy or whims. This peace guards our hearts, our minds, our emotional well-being. Notice, this peace isn't found in the absence of conflicts and problems. No, in fact, this peace recognizes those problems are there, and it overcomes those very problems. It's like that blade of grass that you see it in a field, or you see it even on your home street, and they put concrete over the top of it thinking this is going to kill everything under it, and yet that blade of grass breaks through the concrete all on its own. This is a peace that breaks through. It shatters through all of the weight that gets placed on top of us. So what if the place that you felt most at peace in your life wasn't some vacation beach? But what if you could experience real, lasting, overcoming peace even while you were standing in the midst of those very struggles? Just as I spoke to that congregation in Ohio a few years ago, I want to say now to you, peace, the wholeness of life that's described in that word shalom, isn't found when all of your problems magically go away someday, somehow. It can be found right now. Because while we try to ignore our problems while we're sipping Mai Tais on the beach, we know in that level 3 experiential kind of knowing that they're just going to come back the second we let our guard down. But Jesus offers a way of living that doesn't constantly break our hearts. Jesus offers something so much greater than the absence of our problems. He offers His presence. And in John chapter 14, which remember was started by the words, "Do not let your hearts be troubled," Jesus concludes with this, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives, so do not let your hearts be troubled or fearful." And then Jesus says something that in the moment He's just referring to His disciples to, hey, let's move on to our next location. And yet I think it's so fitting in this as well. He says, get up. Let's leave this place, right? Some of us have been sitting in our fears and worries so long, they feel like our closest friends. Some of us have gotten so cozy with our worries that we've built a reinforced room for them right in our hearts. But what if it's time to get up and leave that place? What if it's time to leave behind those worries and those troubling fears that consume us, not because they're going away or because we can get away from them, but because we are leaving their effect on us behind? Because in our hearts, we experience that peace and we are consumed by it. We recognize that peace isn't found when we try and go somewhere else, but when we recognize what's already there. What if the most peaceful place on the planet was right where you are right now, in these exact circumstances, with these exact amount of bills piling up, with the exact troubles that you're going through right now? What if you could experience peace? Today's Palm Sunday. And on that first Palm Sunday, the people welcomed their king. There was great rejoicing. There was great celebration. They overcome their circumstances, and it resonated from within their soul. Today, Jesus is offering you that peace. Not like you found elsewhere. Not like you found at work or the kind that disappears, but the kind that overcomes. And so, what if we invited God's presence more into our lives? In the Bible, light and even fire represent God's presence. And many of us right now feel as though God's presence has been more distant than perhaps it has in previous seasons. So what if this week we did something a little bit different? What if we cried out in a different way? And so I want to consider this challenge for you, this next step opportunity. We're introducing a new set of stations to our in-person services where we're lighting candles, not to light them for the dead or not to remember lost loved ones, but to recognize that we want more of God's presence in our lives. What if this week you were to grab a candle and as safely as possible, make sure you're observing your fire codes. What if you lit that candle at the start of your day before you went anywhere else and just recognized God's power and presence in your life? Recognize that while we try and chase here and there for peace, it could be right here. What if we centered our life right at the start of our day, recognizing that we don't have to ask God to show up. He's there, and He's ready to show up. What if we recognize His presence in such a way that our problems start to seem smaller and smaller? And even if they don't go away, the strings that they have tied to our hearts get snapped, like when you hold a candle to a string. What if we recognize God's presence? Because God's presence leads to peace. This is the way. This is the way of the unbroken heart. This is the way of the unbridled spirit. This is the way of the unorphaned child. Jesus is the way for us to experience the peace we've always been looking for. This is the way.
Well, God's Word is amazing. But in the midst of our challenges and our trials, we often miss what God is trying to say to us in the distractions of the situation we might be in. But when we quiet ourselves long enough to seek and listen to what God is trying to tell us, confusion fades, freedom reigns. We can have hope and peace in His promise to keep us safe. Today, as we quiet our hearts and listen, we know we can trust you, Jesus.
Suddenly I'm not afraid, 'cause when you speak,
every single word you say, 'cause I don't want to miss one word you speak, 'cause everything you say is life to me. Oh, I don't want to miss one word you speak. It's quiet my heart, I'm listening.
When sorrows rise and troubles rage, you whisper peace. When I don't have the words to say, I won't lose hope. When storms roll, you keep your word. Oh, and your promises will keep me safe.
I don't want to miss one word you speak, 'cause everything you say is life to me. Oh, I don't want to miss one word you speak. So quiet my heart, I'm listening.
You know just what I need. I trust you, Jesus. You see what I cannot see. Your ways are higher. You know just what I need. I trust you, Jesus. You see what I cannot see. Your ways are higher. You know just what I need. I trust you, Jesus. You see what I cannot see. Your ways are higher. You know just what I need. I trust you, Jesus. You see what I cannot see.
I don't want to miss one word you speak, 'cause everything you say is life to me. Oh, I don't want to miss one word you speak, 'cause every word I'm listening. Oh, I don't want to miss one word you speak, 'cause everything you say is life to me. Oh, I don't want to miss one word you speak. So quiet my heart, I'm listening. I don't want to miss one word you speak, 'cause everything you say is life to me. Oh, I don't want to miss one word you speak. So quiet my heart, I'm listening.
Thanks for joining us today at Altitude Church Online. I am so glad that you chose to worship together today. There's a lot of amazing things going on at Altitude. In fact, we are preparing for our launch this fall. If you have been tracking along with us, you know that God is doing some exciting things and some new opportunities are ahead of us. If you'd like to be a part of it, I would encourage you to email launchteam@altitude.church. We would love to talk to you about what it looks like to use the passions and the gifts that God has given you online or in person to make a difference in our community. One of the ways that we make a difference in our community is through your giving. When you give to Altitude Church, you fund the life-changing ministry that happens every single day. You can give online anytime, safely and securely by using the link that's on the screen. If you can believe it, we're actually getting close to Easter of 2021. I know last Easter was weird, and this Easter may still have some of that baggage with it, but we're coming up on a new and exciting Easter event. And so I want to encourage you to start talking to your family about joining online or in person for Easter at Altitude. This year, we're going to start a new series entitled, You Don't Have to Advertise a Fire. Intrigued by the title? Come back and find out more about it. Thanks again for joining us at Altitude Church Online. We're so glad you're here, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.